You're listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.
This episode.
The name Straker, Ed Straker, sort of, in Facts.
It's the 4th of July, but nobody's celebrating in the randomizer.
And it's time for more Anderson-related Sweet Talk. It's part 2 of our chat with Matthew Sweet.
Oh, I see what you did there. That's all coming up in Pod 131.
Thank you very much. Of the Gerry Anderson Podcast.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is Christmas Control. Stand by. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Gerry Anderson Podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
Well, hello there.
Oh, hello.
Strange to bump into you around these parts.
Isn't that odd? Yes, I was just thinking about you, actually. I was just thinking, isn't it about time that we did the latest Gerry Anderson podcast?
Gosh, yeah, I was thinking, I wonder what Richard James is up to.
Yeah, and I was thinking maybe Jamie Anderson is going to call me any minute now, and we'll do it tonight.
Well, how strange that is exactly how things have panned out. And speaking of panning out, there's Chris Dale, who's also joining us, who seems to be, I think, sautéing some mushrooms, maybe? Is that?
I wonder what the smell was. That's delicious, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's making a beef Wellington, That must be for the, is it duxelle? Is that what you call it when the mushrooms are all chopped up?
Anyway, I don't know. We'll ask Chris later. Lovely.
This is actually the Gerry Anderson podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And what happens here, Richard James?
Oh, you know what happens by now. How many of these have we done? I mean, 130 odd by now. So you know the score. We've got, of course, some wonderful emails from our lovely podstrons. We'll be popping over to their Facebook group and seeing what they're up to. We'll be heading over to Twitter and YouTube to read some comments there. But more importantly, we've got all your familiar favourite features. That's Chris Dale's Amazing Randomizer coming up a little later on. We've got some news in the Gerry Anderson universe. We've got Fab Facts coming up in a little while. And part 2 of Jamie's interview with a rather wonderful Matthew Sweet.
I'd say he's more than wonderful.
Yeah.
Or more than rather wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, yet more discoveries, digging into Dad's psyche and looking at what he did and why. And yeah, it was just a really fascinating chat with Matthew. I really enjoyed it. So very much looking forward to reliving the second part of that interview very soon.
Great. Now, Jamie, before we go any further, I did pop on over to our Facebook group. That's facebook.com/groups/podsterons.
Oh, yes.
To let our lovely listeners and our podsterons know that we were recording another podcast today. And I did ask them, is there anything you'd like me to ask Jamie?
Oh, not again.
So are you ready? Now,
go on then.
Martin Smith says, did Jamie manage to get anything from Monday's auction? This is the Eubanks auction that happened a couple of weeks ago. Did he get any of the cubes? I did bid on the computer and Terrahawks game stuff, the perfect item for me being a retro gamer and Terrahawks fan, but it went way out of my pay grade at 3 times the estimated value.
Gosh. Yes, I did. And in fact, they are sat next to me right now, the winning items here. Now,
right.
We don't have endless space to keep stuff, nor do we have endless funds to buy stuff, and we have to be really, really sensible about this kind of thing. As lovely as it would be to get all of it and feed it into a Gerry Anderson museum, that is not going to happen for some time, maybe eventually, but not right now. So the 2 things that I really wanted was a collection of stills from Terrahawks, because we're sort of woefully inadequate in our Terrahawks library.
Right.
Managed to get that, so 500 Terrahawk stills, some of which are really lovely, really great pictures. There's a beautiful one, actually, I've got right here of Christine Glanville cuddling Youngstar.
Yes. Oh.
And one of Richard Gregory looking quite annoyed that he's being disturbed. And I think he's working on a kestrel head, maybe?
Oh, lovely.
So just really lovely things to have, and a great picture of Youngstar standing next to Dad in his office at Bray. But great stuff in there. And then also we picked up a bundle of stuff about a previously unknown, to me anyway, Gerry Anderson series, Strike Force 3.
Strike Force 3? I mean, these keep coming, don't they? These unknown Gerry Anderson series.
Also known as the Hit Squad, which contains pretty much everything about the series and a pilot script.
Well.
So that is something that we will look at doing something with in the future. Who knows what yet, but I've got a lot of reading to do and a lot of scanning of photographs to do.
Oh, I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful one day at the next Andacon, which is going to happen at some point? Yeah,
yes, you're
we
right.
have a table read of one of these fantastic unseen, unread scripts.
All right, fine. Well, look, I'll say here and now, I will, give an exclusive.
Yeah.
We are looking into some sort of event, physical, in-person event next year, at a point when we think it's probably safe to plan for that sort of thing.
Okay.
And if it's possible, we will do a table read of Strike Force 3.
Wow. Lovely.
The script is called Minesweeper.
All right.
So how's that? There you go. There's an exclusive news to follow on that particular event. We do have a date pre-booked.
Okay.
Gosh, this is a real exclusive you've got out of me.
It really is. We're only 5 minutes in.
Podstron questions, but I'll stop there. More to follow in due course.
Lovely. Steve Carson says, Richard, I recall a few years ago, Jamie made a plea to locate the original Terrorhawks film stock. Therefore, if you can, ask Jamie if any of the Terrorhawk tapes in the auction were what he was looking for. And if not, are these versions better quality than the ones that Network had to remaster? That's Stephen Carson from Edinburgh. P.S. He says, I'm wearing my FAB Thunderbirds jumper.
Nice. Glad to hear it. So, no, as far as we know now, the negatives, the originals, direct from the cameras were destroyed, sadly. At the end of a storage company's life, they were skipped, as far as we can tell. The copies in the auction were cutting copies. So, literally, ugly, spliced versions, probably covered in tape and joins and with bits missing and stuff that would then go off to be fully cut properly. So we decided that the chances were that those were not going to be in a good state because they did say on the auction that they had some water damage and were mouldy, which is never a good sign. Okay. But also that they would probably be fairly rough, kind of duped prints, so that they would be no better than what's already been found and been on offer, sadly.
I see. Yeah, okay. Willow Landon Smith says, who does Jamie think is the most underrated Anderson character?
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I could say Hubble Orin.
Well,
but that
I don't think he was underrated at all.
That would be said purely to flatter you. Oh, you okay, of course. No, he was very well respected. Everyone was very
overrated, if anything.
Can I say Captain Ochre from New Captain Scarlet?
Okay. All right. Yeah, fair enough.
I think she was pretty cool and not talked about enough.
Callum Parkin, after just listening to an old episode of the Benji and Nick show, whatever that is, he says, where we hear all about Jamie's breakfast exploits that morning, I'm curious to know what he had for breakfast this morning.
Really boring, I'm afraid. I actually didn't have any breakfast this morning. I had a black coffee because I was rushing around and heading out for a meeting.
Ah, yes.
So, and do you know what? I was really hoping to be a bit naughty this morning and stop in for a drive-through at a well-known golden arched establishment for a breakfast thing. Unfortunately, I was held up in traffic and was only got near it at 10:31, which is after they stopped serving those things. So sad.
Finally, for now, Stephen Carson says, will Jamie be able to see Mummy A at Christmas this year?
Yes.
Oh,
yes, all the rules allow, don't they, for 23rd to 27th? So yes, I'll be popping over to Mummy A's, and in fact, we're going for a double meat Christmas this year.
Are you?
She's doing the turkey.
Pork and beef? Oh, I see.
She's doing the turkey and I'm doing a beef brisket.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, see?
Great.
I bet you wish you hadn't asked now.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. Anyway, so we'll be popping back to see what our podstrons have been up to a little later on and answering some emails and questions and all sorts later on in the podcast.
Yeah, this is a nice little new segment you've introduced.
There you go. You like that, do you?
Yeah, live from the podstrons.
Excellent.
But now, you've held it off as long as you possibly can.
I know, that's the main reason I do that section.
I could tell. Well, too late. Now it's time for this week's Fab Facts.
Oh, go on then.
Now, time for this week's Fab Facts.
Now, Richard, I know how much you've enjoyed the last 2 weeks of memory-based Fab Facts.
The new look Fab Facts, yes.
Well, you say new look. I mean, it was just a sort of temporary replacement, really. Because this week we're back to the standard format where I've got a book of Fab Facts. I flick through the book, you shout Fab, and I stop on that page and then read out a Fab Fact from that page or something like that. How does that sound?
Oh, go on then.
Slightly less attractive than the other formats?
Yeah, no, it's fine. Carry on. It'll do. Till we think of something else.
Here we go.
Fab!
Ooh.
Hey?
Well, we've talked about compilation movies before. I'm sure you'll remember the sort of spliced together episodes that were put into 80s VHS sets.
Yep.
Multiple Anderson episodes, all squished into one film. Best examples of that being Super Space Theatre, all done in the early 80s. But a whole decade earlier, Italian audiences were enjoying compilation versions of Space 1999, The Protectors, and UFO, not all together, which were released in Italian cinemas.
Oh, yes.
So they were ahead of the curve with these mash-up things. It's the UFO films that we're going to talk about today, Dickie. And although the series had already been seen on Italian TV by the time the films were released in 73, 74, it still made sense to show it in the cinema because most of Italy was broadcasting in black and white until 1977. So a nice opportunity to see your favourite show in colour and in movie format.
Yeah.
5 whole UFO films were cut together for Italian cinemas, which sort of shows how keen the audiences were to see this fantastic Anderson show in colour.
Yeah.
But for the first 3 films, they also wanted to add a little bit of extra music.
Right.
Sadly, though, they didn't have access to Barry Gray's original score, so they had to find something else.
Right.
Rather than going to some obscure library music that would stick out like a sore thumb, they did the sensible thing and went with some of the most easily identifiable music in film history, as you do.
Yes.
Who was it who composed the UFO music, Richard? I've already given you the answer. Barry. Yes, John Barry. That's it. John Barry.
Yeah, that's it. Yes.
John Barry, the guy who did the music for the Bond films.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So it was Barry Gray, of course. Barry Gray. Yes.
It was Barry Gray, but in this case, they turned to John Barry.
I see.
To use his
Did
music
they?
for these UFO compilations. Yes. So in them, we heard some music from Russia with Love, Thunderball,
Wow.
You Only Live
Right.
Twice, and even the main theme from On Her Majesty's Secret Service,
Right.
which can all be heard multiple times throughout the first 3 Italian UFO compilations.
I can see that working, actually. I really can.
I'm completely with you, actually.
Yes.
There's something quite fitting there.
Yeah, there really is.
But when watching them in particular, there's a track called 007. Which is not the main Bond theme, but was often heard in the Bond series whenever Sean Connery or Roger Moore were doing something daring or heroic.
Okay.
And that track more or less became the main title theme for those Italian UFO films.
Great.
And if you're wondering if they ever used any part of John Barry's scores that actually incorporated the world-famous James Bond theme itself, yes, they absolutely did.
You're joking.
And yet somehow, as you alluded to, those John Barry and Barry Gray scores really fit quite nicely.
Yeah,
they work really
they
well
do. I
side
can
by
imagine.
side.
Yeah.
I guess because they, composers growing up, learning at the same time,
Yeah.
sort of influenced by the same things, and all, both going for that kind of bold orchestral feel.
Yeah.
Now, we should point out, it's never actually been confirmed that all of this was a result of someone getting confused between the 2 great Barrys, Gray
Sure.
and John.
Yeah.
Maybe, hopefully, the Italians did actually negotiate the rights to use the Bond soundtracks, hoping that nobody would notice that some of the most famous movie music that had ever been composed up to the time was being used. But since John Barry's name doesn't appear on the credits, it's also quite possible that someone made a terrible mistake. Or
That's incredible.
they were just pulling a fast one and thought,
Yeah.
we'll get away with that, no probs. I mean, that's
Right,
obviously
but-
not how Italian people speak, but...
Well, no. Surely people must have noticed. I mean, they have the Bond films in Italy. Of course they do.
I'm sure, but
Yeah.
maybe it was just all felt so seamless
Yeah.
with Barry's music that it just worked.
Amazing.
So it didn't stick
Yeah.
out. I mean, if they'd gone for something a bit more, I don't know, a bit more modern, put a bit of Jaws in there perhaps, or
Yes. Bit of Star Wars.
bit of Star Wars, maybe that wouldn't have worked quite so well. I'm really interested now about the idea of rescoring some Anderson episodes with
Absolutely.
some completely different music in there, or a bit of
Can we-
E.T. on UFO possibly.
Yeah, that's right. Some others do have them on Space Precinct. Can we see these anywhere? Can we see UFO with the John Barry
The Italian
score?
versions?
Yeah.
I don't know
Are they
actually.
on YouTube or?
I've got no idea. Possibly.
Oh, right.
I mean,
I'm going to look for that.
yeah. And Postrons, if you know where we can see these UFO 007 remixes, let us know.
Yeah.
Be really interesting to see and hear them.
Nice.
There you go. Anyway, that's probably about the end of this one, isn't it?
I should think so, yeah.
Good. Well, that brings us very neatly to the end of this week's Barry
Bond fact.
Oh, Bond fact. Sure.
Yeah,
well,
it's
fine.
Bond.
I'm keeping Barry. You can have Bond. Let's call the whole thing off.
Yeah, no, I think you might be. I think we might have had a Bond fact before. We've said before there's so much crossover between the worlds of Gerry Anderson and the Bond movies in terms of the crew and production staff and so on. We might have had Bond fact before. So you might be onto a winner there.
It's fine. It's done now. The damage is done. What's next?
Okay, now it's time to turn our attention to some wonderful emails that our podstrons have been sending in to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. For example, Chris Zaremba. Now, I did a very short interview with Radio Marlow, or Marlow FM, which is one of my local radio stations, a volunteer-led radio station in my area. He says, hi, Rich and Jamie, but mainly Richard on this occasion. Chris says, I very much enjoyed your conversations with Jeff and Mary on Marlow FM this week. It was a little light on Space Precinct coverage for my liking, but it was good to hear more about your career and the various other projects with which you've been involved. He says, I look forward to when Marlow FM is allowed to have guests physically in our studios again, and you can sit in the very chair that Jamie sat in when he was my guest a few years ago. As I think I've mentioned before, says Chris, that Marlow FM show with Jamie remains the biggest audience show that the station has ever had for that 10 a.m. to midday time slot, beating the morning when Tom Kerridge came in.
Well,
come on.
What can I say? Bigger than Tom Kerridge. Never thought I'd say that.
I know. He says, I hope to move Tom down another rung when we can get together, Richard.
Quite right, too.
And that was from Chris Zaremba. Thank you, Chris. We have another Chris here, Chris Turner, who says, hi, Jamie, Richard and Chris.
Hello.
I just wanted to tell you how much I've enjoyed First Action Bureau. The storyline, performances, sound design and music have all been fantastic, and I can't wait for season 2, and also find out how the stories and characters link to the other shows in development in the new Anderson universe. The lead character, Nero Jones, is of course played by Genevieve Gaunt, and I thought her surname sounded familiar, so I did a bit of research online and sure enough discovered that she is the daughter of Fiona Gaunt, who played a doctor or psychologist in a long-forgotten BBC series called Moonbase 3 from the early 1970s. It was created by the Doctor Who collaborators Barry Letts and Terence Dix, who Jamie does a very passable impression of, I must say.
I'm not doing it now.
All right. Who wanted to create a more grown-up sci-fi show. It was a co-production, so there was a bigger budget than Doctor Who, but the visual effects and sets were no match for Space 1999, which of course came along a few years later. Also, the storyline of the opening episode features the appointment of a new base commander, which sounds familiar. So, not quite an Anderson connection, says Chris, but definitely a sci-fi and sort of Doctor Who connection. Keep up the great work, and I'm really looking forward to what you've got in store for us in the hopefully not too distant future. And that's with best wishes from Chris Turner.
Oh, cheers, Chris. That's lovely.
Now, you might have noticed something there, Jamie.
What have I noticed?
That's 2 emails there from someone called Chris.
Oh, amazing. Please tell me we've got a third.
Well, as we're getting close to Christmas, I thought we'd have a Merry Christmas Quickfire 5. Yes, it's a Chris off. So, Jamie, out of the following list of options, it's up to you to choose your favourite Chris. Are you ready?
Yes.
Chris Turner or Chris Zaremba?
Chris Zaremba?
Oh, Terrahawk's co-creator Christopher Burr, or Jerry's right-hand woman and legend in her own right, Christine Glanville.
Oh, I love Mr. Burr, but Christine Glanville every time.
Gerry Anderson, scribe and author of such books as The Complete Book of UFO and The Complete Book of Gerry Anderson, Chris Bentley, or National Treasure and Naturalist and Pod 11 guest, Chris Packham.
Oh,
I know, these are cruel. I know, you wait.
Sorry, Chris. Chris Packham.
Story
ouch.
consultant on Space 1999 Year 1 up until End of Eternity, Chris Penfold, or freelance artist, digital designer and animator, Chris Thompson.
What?
I know.
Why are you doing this? Chris Thompson, as much as Penfold, is an important part of the Anderverse, Chris is doing great work now, so.
Gerry Anderson, Uberfan, and randomizer general Chris Dale.
Yes.
Or
yes.
McKinnon and Saunders producer and Lavender Castle alumni, Pod 102 guest, Chris Bowden.
No, but Chris is going to be listening now.
Answer.
What? Chris Bowden, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. It's Chris Dale.
Hey! Very good. There you go. There's our special Christmas. Merry Christmas. Quickfire 5.
Miserable Christmas for me. I'm going to have to message Chris Bowden now to apologise.
Yes, I know. I'm sorry. Also, apologise to him for me mispronouncing his surname.
Maybe I will, maybe I won't.
Oh, all right. There we are. Do you want another email, just to cheer you up?
I need to distract you. I am literally writing a message to Chris Bowden right this second. So you do the email, I'm going to apologise to Chris.
Now, Robert Cassidy got in touch to say, Dear Richard and Jamie, I just wanted to let you know about my recent good fortune in the Eubank auction of memorabilia from Terrorhawks and other Anderson shows. I went into the auction with my heart set on the police cruiser from Space Police. Alas, someone else with deeper pockets than me really wanted it, so I had to let it go. However, I managed to get myself a couple of consolation prizes. Firstly, Catherine Chevalier's post-explosion uniform from Space Police. The shoulder patches have gone missing, maybe the explosion blew them off, but otherwise this is the full uniform, including the helmet, sidearm, and the siliconide indestructible face mask. I'm also very fond of Dick Spanner, and in fact I have vague memories of watching it on Network 7 as a nipper. I'm told I loved it even then. So I was delighted to be the winning bidder on the briefcase and time bomb seen early in the case of the human cannonball. He says, I write this email not to brag, but to let you know that because I, a podsteron, bagged these items, you should consider them available to Anderson Entertainment should you ever want them to display at events such as Fab Worlds. I can't speak for the many other models that were sold at this auction, or what their new owners will do with them. I'd like to think they all went to fans who feel the same way as me, but I'm really proud to own a couple of pieces of Anderson history, and I would love others to be able to see them. So if you ever need them, just try and give me a bit of notice, and I will do my damnedest to make them available to you. All the best for Christmas and the New Year. SPA, Robert Cassidy.
Lovely. Well,
Isn't
maybe
that great?
next year, when we have this possible event, then we could maybe get them out there.
Yeah, great. They'd look rather nice side by side with my Space Precinct shirt and gun and so on.
Perfect. Maybe you can wear Chevalier's mask. I've just had a response from Chris Bowden.
Right.
He says, gutted.
Oh, no. And I feel it's all on me.
I think we probably lost a listener there because of you.
Yeah. Oh, well, can't be helped. Anyway.
Sorry, Chris.
I'm sorry, Chris. It's just a bit of fun.
Yeah, well...
But I won't do it again.
Yeah, I best not. Hang on, have we not got to the Gerry Anderson news yet?
No, I think we should, shouldn't we?
Goodness me, we're 20 odd minutes in and we haven't got the news.
Come on, then.
Let's do the news.
Yes!
It is the
newsy news. Got
correct.
it quick, didn't I? Hey?
Those are your middle names, I think. So, off we go with some Gerry Anderson news. Right, let's keep this short and sweet. As we get towards Christmas, things are obviously going to calm down a little bit, aren't they? It's just the way of the world. We're still very, very busy behind the scenes here. Lots of stuff going on. All sorts of exciting things for 2021. I think you're all going to be rather chuffed with what's on the way. However, for now, on YouTube... You should have seen by now the First Action Bureau Motion Comic Series 1 recap. Art by Lee Sullivan, looks rather lovely, animated by Chris Thompson. Very well done. It's a little recap of everything that's happened to give you some visuals for the series, get you thinking about how it might look, well, possibly as a comic later down the line, or a graphic novel, or a live action series. Who knows? Anyway, as we've already mentioned, Series 2 is on the way in 2021. In fact, Nick and I are writing it right now, and there's some really exciting stuff for Nero and the rest of the First Action Bureau gang.
Nice.
I shall say no more. I don't want to give away too much. Tech Talk Series 2. The long-awaited Series 2 is on the way. Series 1 went through with Brains and Parker and Gordon, many of the vehicles from the Century 21 worlds. Well, Series 2 is coming. I won't tell you who's narrating, but it's pretty cool.
Now, that is very exciting.
And we're going to be launching that on Boxing Day. It's Dad's death anniversary, and... we often reflect on things gone by. I just thought we wanted to do something a little bit more productive, I guess. Still reflective, still looking back at the great stuff, but celebrating it. Celebration's the word I wanted. Yeah, we're celebrating vehicles and technology from the Anderson universe, basically. So episode 1 will be launching on Boxing Day in Dad's memory, and I think you're going to enjoy it.
Exciting.
If you've ordered a Big Chief figure, or if you've ordered anything from the 1612 range, just bear in mind that there are some problems at the UK ports, so shipping is delayed into the UK, which means it's delayed getting to our warehouse. There's nothing we can do about that. It's a combination of COVID and Brexit and other things, all things we don't really want to think about. But you rest assured that the moment they hit the UK shores, they'll be processed as quickly as possible and into our warehouse and out to you. So bear in mind those delays, and Tim and Louise will keep you up to date if you want to drop them a line. But unfortunately, there's just nothing we can do if a ship has been turned away and put into a holding pattern, which has happened a couple of times already. Very frustrating, but yeah, not the end of the world. Hopefully they won't be too long. And finally, if you want a Supermarionation 2021 calendar, we only have 50 in stock. In fact, 49. I've written 50. I just checked, we're down to 49. So they'll probably be gone by the 1st of January. If you want to grab one now or lose out forever.
Great.
You can expect lots of cool stuff coming in the new year. Obviously, we've got some sort of celebratory reflection stuff coming up too in upcoming podcasts. So that for now, though, is the end of this week's Gerry Anderson News.
That was the news. That was the news.
Whoa.
What?
That's just very enthusiastic. That was the news.
Well, I like to give it my all. I never do things by halves, Jamie.
No. Well, only when there's two of them. Making it whole, all, you see.
That's only if I do one of them.
What? Anyway, let's just get on with this podcast, shall we?
Yes, okay, all right, yes, fine. Now, a quick mention before we just carry on that if you really want to make us happy at the end of this year as we head towards Christmas, there is something you can do for us, isn't there, Jamie?
Is this the safe for work version of the podcast?
It is. You can subscribe to us on whichever platform you're listening to us on. And, of course, leave a nice review or a rating to let us know how we're doing and to let the rest of the world know too. And you can even copy the link and share it with your friends so they can get to hear us too. That would be lovely. So, I have here a rather interesting question posed by Louise, who's one of the admins on our Facebook group.
Oh, yeah.
She says, what Gerry Anderson item do you want to find in your Christmas stocking? Hey? So, Maria Alice posted, a Parker Funko would suit me. I'm yet to get one. Oh. Matt Forrester said Thunderbirds on Blu-ray in 4x3.
Yes.
Right. Adam Reckless posted a picture of Stingray, while Tom Woods posted a gif of Gabriella Drake.
I don't know what that means. I'm not sure what I should say to that.
And also now, Jamie, this sort of dropped a bit out of the blue, didn't it, this week? But I did see on the Gerry Anderson YouTube channel that we had a rather special update from someone in the Gerry Anderson universe. Yes,
you're quite right. Jeff Tracy dropped by to tell us all about the origins of FAB. Now, well, we know that FAB doesn't mean anything and it just was derived from fabulous, but it's nice to bring it into canon so that even Jeff acknowledges it meant nothing other than affirmative or acknowledged.
That's right.
So beautiful job by John Coleshaw. He did a fantastic Jeff Tracy. Funnily enough, John Coleshaw, who you've been working with last week.
Yeah, are we allowed to talk about that? I suppose that's about all we can say, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think we can say any more than that, but it's been great fun, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. It's been lovely. Yes, well, on that subject of the Jeff Tracy video, Arian Cameron posted on our Facebook group, this is a question, what does FAB stand for, that I've been waiting to hear answered all my life. Lauren J. Gradwell says, well done, John Coleshaw, for doing Jeff's voice. Kath Baker said he did a beautiful job. Rebecca Andrews says, finally got round to listening. It's a sheer delight to hear John Coleshaw do his best Peter Dineley and do Jeff Tracy's voice. Matt Keskivari also posted, so I listened to Pod 129 yesterday, and the alarm clock bit got me thinking of something. For a long time, the morning alarm sound on my phone has been the music cue from Thunderbirds Argo when the hood gets his foot stuck. But now, I'm wondering if I should change it to something more cheerful. And he asks fellow Podstrons to leave their suggestions underneath. And finally, Jack Knoll posted, it's December, which in our house means the tree goes up and the fab Christmas jumpers go on. He posted a picture of himself sporting this year's Thunderbirds Christmas sweater.
Oh, and isn't it a gorgeous one? Not that you know, because you haven't got one.
No, I haven't. No, I gave mine away out of the goodness of my heart.
You're a star. What a kind man you are.
I'll tell you, yes. So there we are. Lots more messages and Twitters and all sorts of things coming up a little later on.
Well, while we wait for those things,
yes,
should we distract ourselves with something sweet?
Oh, what a lovely idea. Has he finished those mushrooms?
No, Crystal Twister will be back later on with some randomizer.
All right.
No, it's part 2 of my chat with the rather marvellous Dr. Matthew Sweet, talking all things Anderson, his thoughts of Dad. as a creator, as a man who was never entirely happy. But then, are any of us happy who are trying to create truly with what we've created, or is there always that little bit of nagging doubt? We discussed all that and more in part 2 of my chat with Matthew Sweet. How did you think he coped with, on the one hand, he was doing Scarlet, which I think he was immensely proud of.
Yeah.
And on the other, he was dealing with feeling like his baby had been taken from him and raised as something which he saw as, the biggest sort of crap he'd ever seen in his life, I think was the quote.
Ah, right. Yes. They didn't put that on the poster, did they? I don't, you see, gosh, it's interesting to be asked this question by the son of the subject, but I think in a way, I don't know, my question to him, if he was here now, would be, well, what do you really want, Gerry? I know all these things that you object to, and I know that you have this kind of, this other dream about, I suppose, about being, about being Kubrick, but doing a series, being some kind of like the Kubrick of television, or being somebody else. I don't quite know what his real aim was, but I know the things that he felt burdened by, and I know what he wanted to escape, and I know what his dissatisfactions were. And I think somehow those dissatisfactions were the things that drove him. I mean, it's an immense career. It's much longer than most people's career in such things, and it stays at such a high level for such a long time. But I think in a way, like maybe like a lot of successful men in the 1960s, breaking through from a relatively humble background, not from a establishment family who's well connected and where everybody's been to university. I think there was a sort of he was a kind of angry young man, perhaps somebody of that generation, and there was a sort of unfocused quality about that anger, because I remember it's always fascinated me about the shifting relationship he had with puppetry, which I'm sure is very well trodden territory for everybody who's really engaged with his work. And it's almost in a way the subject of it. The subject of Thunderbirds is, how do we stop how do we stop this being a puppet show? How do we escape from puppetry and forget puppetry and enter some other kind of realm? And for the most part, that's an illusion that works with Thunderbirds, because it looks so much better than most live action series of the period. It's in terms of the design and everything, it's better than Star Trek, isn't it? I hope that's not that hasn't opened up a battlefield.
We're not going to pick at it. You'll definitely upset some people there, but let's gloss over it.
But I almost came to think of, in a way, the relationship between your father and the puppets had a little of Dead of Night about it. I remember saying to him, the last time I ever spoke to him, which was at Pinewood for a Radio 4 program we did with him. And I think the question was, Gerry, do you have any regret? And we weren't recording, so I'm afraid we couldn't. It was sort of one of those moments where you're just sort of waiting to start. And he said, yes, those puppets. And I was quite taken aback by his use of that word.
Well, puppets,
and also the extent of that dissatisfaction. And I thought, gosh, if I was telling the story of the life of Gerry Anderson, it might be like the relationship between Maxwell and Hugo in Dead of Night, where the puppets have a horrible kind of life, and the puppet master has no real independent existence of them. So his story, and this is, I think, I think this is really common in people, perhaps people of that generation, this raging dissatisfaction with the thing that people love them for. And I've observed that in many people over the years. I think it was particularly prevalent in that generation. And I'm thinking of people who really embraced television in the 60s and came from other backgrounds, and towards the end of their lives got this idea into their head that they wasted their time. Jonathan Miller was like this about television. At the end of his life, he was saying, I should have been a doctor. And Clive James also thought that he'd somehow squandered the best of himself on television. And I think also of Christopher Lee and his toxic relationship with with Dracula and his deep ambivalence towards horror, and this feeling that there were some things that he was sort of above in some way, that he was a bit too good for some of this stuff. And that perhaps that's true, but I think it seems so much more important to be at peace with the idea that loads of people really like you for something that you've done. And I think that should probably be enough for really, but it's a really easy thing to say, isn't it? It's a really easy thing to say. And I think that if you have a different set of ambitions, or if you suddenly find yourself in possession of this amazing hit that you don't feel like that truly represents your sensibility, then I can see why that would gnaw away at you. And I don't know whether, you can answer this better than I can, but as he said it to me, I thought, you're just giving me the quote, or you're just trying to amuse me here, or do you really feel this? And I wonder whether there's an answer to that question, actually. Whether that he just has to occupy that moment where he sort of loves what he does and he sort of hates it.
Yeah, that he was definitely well known for a dry sense of humor, so dry, in fact, that people would sometimes ring mum after an interaction and say, look, he said this. Was he joking? It was that difficult for some people to know.
He had this smile as well, and he had that smile that always used to make me think slightly of Peter Vaughan in Porridge. I think there's a slight, sadly it's no longer possible, but if we could have cast the Gerry Anderson biopic with Peter Vaughan, I think that would have been good. Physically there's something they have in common facially, but also something of the steeliness, about them, I think, and that smile.
Yes,
that smile, the ambiguous smile, where you don't really know whether what they're saying to you is a joke or a threat, and an admission from deep in their soul.
And you'll never know. I'm not even sure that he was aware of that. I don't think he was playing with that kind of dry thing to try and wrong foot people. I just think that's how he communicated. But this analysis that you've got here of this dissatisfaction as a driver is, I think, spot on. And normally, when we have these conversations, people focus on the fascination with aviation and technology, and the kind of the desire for a better planet and better relations between humans. And I think that was there, but it is pretty much every major decision and every step forward I can see, with this lovely 2020 hindsight in his life is totally driven by dissatisfaction. Everything from wanting to make something of himself. He had this phrase he always used to beat me over the head with, clogs to clogs in 3 generations, because he would always say, I had nothing, I wanted something, which is basically, it was kind of made real in this desire for a Rolls Royce. And he was like, now you're not going to have that because I've made something of myself. So I'm really worried that you're going to, sort of fulfill the cycle. But he wanted to get out of poverty and wanted to make something of himself. And then when he was working for other people, he was dissatisfied with that relationship. So he went and set up with Arthur Provis because of the dissatisfaction there. Then it was puppets, dissatisfied with puppetry, want to make it better. Looking back on every series, just through a lens of pure dissatisfaction with all the things that were not right about it. Even Thunderbirds, even Scarlet. Then dissatisfaction with the puppets as a whole. We're making that transition to live action. And right through to him then probably having a sense of everything I've achieved, there's something wrong with all of it. So when I, as a kid, said, I want to go and do what you do, for him, again, it's, well, I don't want dissatisfaction for my son. And so he tried to dissuade me. There are other things at play there for sure. But it's a really interesting and slightly sad analysis, isn't it? That so much of that stuff, which has brought so much joy to so many people, and they would see possibly as perfection in many ways, was totally dissatisfying to him.
It is, but except I think it's really common. And I think it's also perhaps generational. And I think it also is perhaps maybe in part explained by the way that your dad's life collided with the history of the 20th century. There's something of the clogs to clogs thing, I think, is really revealing. And I think that if people know poverty, even if it's just something that their parents told them that they experienced, if people know it and fear that it might come again, I think that really conditions their attitudes to everything, and particularly because of having experienced that loss in the war and the everyday deprivations of war. That generation bore the marks of that, and I think you can read a lot of it in the actions of that rising generation from the war, who not only were the inheritors of a sort of trauma, and I think speaking very broadly, I mean not anything about your family history, but I think there was a sort of, as a generation, that first post-war generation grew up parented by people who were rather distant from their children. I think the war made people distant from their children because of things like evacuation, and because of not really wanting to protect yourself from the possibility that you might be killed, your kids might be killed, the country might be destroyed. I think there was a sort of emotional glaciation that happened during the war that people really had to make an effort to recover from. And I think you can see the after effects of that in that generation and in its art as well. I think it's partly why it produces so many uncompromising figures.
Wow. I mean, it's the way we've picked it apart and the way we've analysed them and the stuff that you were privy to by having those conversations. We've sort of painted a picture of a troubled man scarred by his past and never quite happy. But in those conversations and the work and stuff,
that's all of us, though, isn't it?
I mean,
of course.
But I don't, because we're talking about shows that have brought joy to so many people. I would hate to paint a picture of somebody who was never happy and never satisfied, because there were moments when he would come home and present stuff that he was really pleased with. So in particular, New Captain Scarlet being his final production, what was the sense you got from him talking about that? Because he was doing something new with technology. He was really at the forefront of CGI and motion capture.
He was extremely excited about it. He was very, very proud of it. He showed me around the offices full of all these pixel drovers and all these people hunkered down over screens doing work that was pioneering, really, I think. And he was happy, I think, to be engaged in working with a technology that was truly at the cutting edge, rather than a kind of improvisation that was something that really well-moneyed producers were doing too. They were all pushing at the same kind of technology and imagery. There wasn't that sense that there really is with Supermarionation, that it's kind of a pragmatic solution to an almost impossible problem that he's solving with kind of scaled-down sets and solenoids and batteries. This is something where he's using the same kind of technology that the big Hollywood players are doing. But actually, because of always having done his work through avatars of one sort or another, he was really confident with that. And the idea of using a CGI cast was not something that, many of younger producers working in that field would have had more anxiety about it than him. But he knew that it was perfectly possible to tell a story and create convincing characters that people loved and that people had, as the listeners' remarks to our Barry Gray Sound of Cinema showed, quite well developed sexual attraction to. We haven't gone there, have we? But I think that program revealed that there was quite a big market for Troy Tempest slash fiction of one sort or another.
Oh yeah, terrifying.
But sorry, I slightly lost my thread there. But he knew that it was perfectly possible to articulate a really exciting story and make people believe in characters that weren't made of flesh and blood and that were made of some other material, plastic and glass and artificial fiber in the 60s and pixels and binary code in the 2000s. And I remember not only did he want to show me the people at work and the design sketches and everything like that, he also wanted to show me the computing power of it. And I remember him taking me into a room that was just the servers on which all of this stuff was being processed. And we just stood there and we listened to the hum of these machines and absorbed something of their warmth. And that, I think, was a moment where there was no bitterness about that, no sense that he was making do. All sense of the arguments beyond the room vanished, and he was just a man, basking in the warmth of his own invention.
Wow. That's a lovely thing. What a nice memory. Just to wrap up, Matthew, if you could introduce somebody to the world of Gerry Anderson and say, this series, or even this episode, if you know them well enough, will tell you all you need to know about Gerry Anderson and his style and about the man himself.
Oh, wow! This is hard, because I think in a way, because where is he in those shows? I mean, I think that's one of the intriguing questions about where his personality emerges, since he is sort of slightly at odds with many of these creations. Well, I can tell you the one that sticks in my mind most, but I don't know whether it really expresses anything very deep about him. But it's the episode of UFO where the alien crash lands and walks into an old lady's living room. And that is the one that haunts me slightly, and I can remember that made me feel very uneasy. I suppose it's rather a Doctor Who-y kind of situation, so maybe it's not very characteristic. I think actually, okay, well, here's my real answer then. I think that it's the concluding parts of episodes of Thunderbirds, where all the traces are gathered, where something social is going on, where the piano is being played and everybody is in their loungewear and smoking and reflecting on a job well done and the world saved and fires put out. I think that's probably where we might find him.
Amazing. Matthew, it's been amazing and really insightful. I feel like I've learned new things about Dad that I didn't know before, and probably myself as well. So thank you. If people want to follow you on Twitter and that kind of thing, where do they find you?
I'm Dr. Matthew Sweet on Twitter.
Amazing. Dr. Matthew Sweet, you've been amazing. FAB, in fact. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamie. What a pleasure.
Well, as you can probably tell, I thoroughly enjoyed that chat.
Yes, how interesting.
I hope you really enjoyed listening to it and Matthew's thoughts on everything past and present and future, I suppose, about the worlds of Anderson and Dad and his nature, him as a person and him as a creative. I just loved Matthew's thoughts. Like I said last week, I think Matthew is such a clever chap.
Yeah.
Even listening back and hearing him talk, it just makes me feel very happy but very stupid, because he's such a bright man.
Yeah, what wonderful insight he brought to that as well.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll be able to chat more about stuff in the future, because I think if we got Matthew Sweet and Samira Ahmed together,
oh God, right, yes,
then chances are we'd be into some really fascinating territory. Although, I mean, the plus side is I wouldn't have to say a word.
No, you really wouldn't.
Which would be great. Anyway, now, Richard, this is Christmas is coming up.
Yes.
You sound like you were going to fall off a chair there. Are you all right?
No, go on. No, I'm excited. What's happening at Christmas?
Well, as a Christmas treat, and thanks to Mark Jones, we have a bit of archive material for you next week.
Okay.
Which is our Christmas present to you. It's an interview with the Century 21 team, recorded at a convention in 1981.
Ah, lovely.
And features Dad, John Brown, and Wanda Brown from the puppet side, Paddy Seal, lighting cameraman, Bert Rule, who worked on Four for the Fools, Roy Lafbury, who was a dialogue editor, Ralph Titston, now curator of the Barry Gray Archive, and Martin Bauer, model maker.
Okay.
Really interesting gang. Obviously slightly variable quality, but something you won't have heard before, unless you were there, of course. Some of you may have been. If you were, let us know. Well, Ralph, who's listening, I'm sure will certainly have been there.
Yes.
But yes, you could enjoy that, a little sort of glimpse into the past. And it's funny actually listening, and there's a bit where Dad says, you'll have to forgive us because many of these things were, 15 years ago.
Right, wow. Now that's recent history, isn't it?
Exactly, and here we are now talking about things 55 years ago.
That's right.
So yeah, it's great fun to hear. So that'll probably be just on the 21st. It may span over to the 28th.
Okay.
But let's see how we go. But there you go. Something really interesting to look forward to. And again, part of the wonderfully varied features that we managed to come up with on the podcast. I hope you're enjoying them.
Yeah, great, absolutely. And I'll be paying homage to some of those varied features in sort of a look back over the year as well as we head towards the end of 2020. I don't know what sort of format it'll be, but it'll be a few memories of news items and favourite guest interviews and so on that we've conducted over the last 12 months.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Now, would you like some more missives from our podstrons?
I feel we'd be missing something if we didn't have some of said missives.
We really would, wouldn't we? Now, this one is from, they signed the email, or rather they didn't sign the email, but it did come from an address that sort of had Captain Scarlet in the name, but it was
we know
misspelled.
that is.
Oh, do we?
Yeah.
Who's that then?
Well, I think we do.
Okay.
Let me look it up now.
Yeah, go on. I'll read it. It says, "Hi, Jamie, Mosley and Richard. I hope you've got over the excitement of the Eubanks auction. It's a great testament that you were allowed to be involved. I woefully missed out on the Christmas jumper competition as I really wanted to enter to win one for each of Abby and Willow, who I think deserve at least some recognition for the hard work that they've been putting in over the year with the Zoom quiz, streaming and isolation updates, and generally being there for us Podstrons over on the Podstrons Facebook group. Hear, hear. On the subject of new items for the shop, I would personally like to see some bookmarks, as I've not managed to read all of Space Precinct Reloaded in one sitting. Another idea would be chocolates in the shape of the vehicles or characters advent calendar for 2021, or even moulds for customers to make their own. Jamie, I know your dad did not really appreciate the happiness his volume of work gave to people, but hopefully you know that you providing your promoting of his works, and now your own, is continuing the Anderson heritage into the 21st century. Merry Christmas to you and all your team, and roll on 2021.
And it's from Steve. You know, Steve with 2 E's.
Oh, Steve. Yes, I see. Gotcha. Great. Well, there we are. Now, that's an interesting point there then, Steve. Steve says that Gerry didn't really appreciate the happiness that his volume of work gave to people. Is that true, Jamie? Or I know we'd spoken many times that he was not a sentimental man, didn't keep a lot of stuff, and he sort of was more sort of business-minded. But can it be true he didn't really know how much his work was loved and admired?
He had a certain appreciation, particularly later on, you know, going to conventions and stuff, people explaining it. I think he would maybe never fully let it in.
Right.
You know? And it would always be countered by his sort of his 2020 hindsight, looking back and going, oh yeah, but we didn't do that very well, and that could have been better.
Right.
So I think that would have kind of neutralized any real depth of feeling about just what a big difference it made to people's lives. But I think, you know, he still appreciated it and got it, but maybe felt he couldn't fully understand or appreciate it.
Yeah. Martin Laybourne says, "I've just received the fabulous Christmas jumper, which I was fortunate enough to win in your recent competition. Thank you so much. I will wear it with pride. A very nice piece of attire that goes with virtually anything. Unlike your white trainers, Richard. You know, the ones you wear with your dark suit whilst presenting the bidding room. I don't understand why everyone on that show keeps calling you Nigel. I know it's you. Your looks, although you don't seem to have aged a little, and your voice is unmistakable. Anyway, thanks again, and I wish you all at the podcast a very Merry Christmas and a fab New Year," from Martin Laybourne, who thinks, I think, that I look like Nigel Havers. It has been said before.
No comment. I mean, a much younger Nigel Havers.
Yes. Martin Gardner posted a video on our Facebook group in honour of Dave Prowse, showing the original footage of Darth Vader with Dave's voice. Dave Prowse, of course, having died a couple of weeks ago, and does have a Gerry Anderson connection, but he said there must be tapes of our Richard James as a posh Orin somewhere. R.I.P. Dave Prowse. Well, indeed there are, Mark Gardner. You can see a clip, I think, on the Space Precinct box set that was out last year.
You're right.
Yes. There we are. Yeah. All for now, more later.
Thank you all for now.
Yeah.
That means then that, I think, in fact, I've just seen Chris has put that beef Wellington into the oven now. It's looking rather good.
Oh, has he? Yes.
That's going to be at least, 25 minutes, half an hour probably?
I'd think about that before it's ready, yeah.
Yeah. So in that case, we should just let him get on with the randomizer and hope that it's not a 50-minute episode, because then we'll be in trouble.
Yes, true.
Eek. Good luck, Chris.
Here you are, Marina, the inside of the church itself. It's even more lovely than the outside, isn't it? Yeah, I'm glad you like it. Now, somewhere around here there should be the vicar. Yoo-hoo! Anyone at home?
Did someone call?
Yes, over here.
Morgan, how are you?
Now, just remember, Marina, he's a little deaf, so...
Speak up, man. You know I'm a little deaf.
Yes, of course. Reverend, this is my friend Marina, and...
This is unexpected. Most kind. I'll give you a receipt.
What? Oh, no, I'm not donating her. No, she just wanted to see the church. Have a look round, you know.
Certainly. So glad you've dropped in. Do you realise this time next week we'll all be sleeping off our Christmas dinner?
Well, not quite. There's still about 10 days to go until then, but before that...
Before?
Yes, we have to get this week's randomizer done. The button right here, if you would.
Yes, I know. I understand.
I must say, Reverend, you certainly carry that tune better than certain other residents of the Anderson universe. Have you ever heard the Tracy Boys rendition?
Oh, shocking.
Ah, you have. Right, let's see what we have today.
Yes. Well,
It's Supercar with What Goes Up.
the Lord moves in mysterious ways.
So it's back to Supercar on the randomizer. This is one of the earliest Supercar episodes we have yet seen. I think only beaten by Talisman of Sargon. And what's this?
Oh,
Oh,
Mitch, you can't go in there.
HQ Project 4th of July.
And Colonel Lewis, too. Dr. Beaker says there just isn't any room for us.
He also says I'm an annoying little squirt who needs to clear off, but he said it in slightly more rude words than that.
They're in the control room. Come on, then. We'll be able to see just exactly what they're doing.
Ooh. Lots of business going on in the workshop. Luckily, Jimmy and Mitch aren't allowed in to see.
Well, gentlemen, so far so good. She'll gain a little more altitude over the next hour or so, but it'll be slow.
This is Colonel Lewis, who
We're in the region of...
I think I have to say is one of the ugliest guest characters to ever appear in any Supermarionation production.
She's carrying a heavier load than usual, but, well, she's up all right.
It might be because the puppet seems to be incapable of closing its mouth, so it just sort of, when he's not got dialogue, he stands there with a sort of derpy expression on his face.
But we don't want her down here again. No, sirree, not with that cargo on board.
So they've launched some kind of balloon with some kind of dangerous cargo into,
It's like being at the movies.
what looks like space, I suppose.
Hello, South Dakota. South Dakota, do you read?
South Dakota here, reading track clear.
Canaveral, do you read?
Canaveral clear.
Patterson Field, do you read?
Patterson Field here. Yeah, trace clear.
Once again, I really love all this with early Supercar. Lots of
Oh, thank you.
chatter that doesn't really drive the story, but just makes what's going on feel a bit more real. Like with checking in with everybody there. I think that happens a few times during this episode.
Destroy it. Yes, that's right, Jimmy. Make a bang that'll be seen for miles, with a telescope, of course. Fireworks in the stratosphere. That's why we call the project 4th of July.
Maybe you get it, Mitch.
Mitch is on the phone, checking with his people. This all checks out.
Why can't you bring it down somehow? Say on a parachute.
Well, we could, Jimmy, easily. But it would be too dangerous.
There's nothing suspicious. Shut up.
You see, Jimmy, that capsule up there contains more than 7 liters of the Colonel's new rocket fuel. Quite apart from all the instruments transmitting readings to Dr. Beaker.
Don't the instruments cost an awful lot?
Oh, I'm afraid they do, but we just can't risk bringing them down, just the same.
Why, tap it with a rubber mallet and I should think it would go off like a bomb.
Oh, he's right, too. It's okay up there at 100,000 feet, but down here...
It might still explode, no matter how gently you put it down.
That's about the size of it.
And that's entirely neglecting the possibility that it has received quite a considerable amount of radiation.
And that is why I have recommended that you, Jimmy, should go and investigate the matter. I will provide you with a stick.
No one.
But in any case, it won't be wasted.
The Colonel will by then have received much valuable information.
Thanks.
About sending explosives into space.
I guess it sounds safer up there.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why they're doing this, and I may have waffled over it.
I reckon you're more interested in popcorn than balloons.
It's one of the dangers of doing this with episodes that, I've seen this before several times, but not for a long time, so I'm kind of unfamiliar with it.
In the capsule's internal pressure, Colonel.
If you're interested, in the first time I saw this episode, this was on the Tape Trading Network. I had a whole VHS tape, Supercar episodes 1 to 20 back to back.
I'm bound to say I put little faith in your stabilizer.
It seems that Dr. Beaker thinks that on account of we're the Air Force, we aren't likely to be chemical geniuses.
And here's why we see why the Colonel puppet is incapable of closing his mouth, because he's got to have a cigar jammed in there at all times.
That's still within theoretical normal limits, you know, Dr. Baker.
Is something wrong, Mike?
Just can't tell, Jimmy. Half of it's way over my head.
Sounds like the safest place for it to be.
In any case.
Jimmy humor.
Not mine.
It's almost like regular humor, but not.
I am bound to say that I put very little confidence in that either.
Well, okay, Doctor.
Oh, that was another catchphrase of Beaker's in early episodes. I am bound to say.
No, Mitch, he didn't mean any offense.
Don't mind them.
That's it. Mitch is on a jihad. He's gonna have the Colonel's head by the end of the day.
External temperature minus 55 centigrade.
If you like that sort of thing.
Patterson Field, do you read?
Patterson, trace, steady.
And the volume appears steady too, Doctor.
7.
Again, I really admire what the Woodhouses were doing with the scientific element in this, and despite what I said earlier, I'm actually kind of...
Everything would seem to be...
tiring of this technical chatter by this point.
Have you the recordings okay?
Perfect, thank you.
I mean, we're more than 5 minutes in by this point, and,
I think we're just about ready to call it a day.
nothing much has actually happened.
Mitch, I think they're getting ready to blow up the capsule. Should be exciting.
Won't be anything to get steamed up about, Jimmy.
Why, Mike? What happens?
Doc, you care to lecture your audience on what you're going to do?
All that will happen is that I shall press this button, and the radar trace will disappear from the screen. Provided, that is, if the Air Force will permit me another small dig at them, provided it works.
You sound like you thought it mightn't, Doc. What then?
I was only being humorous. Of course it would work.
Humorous. It's that thing that you tried to do earlier, but failed at.
In a gosh awful mess, let's face it. But it won't happen, we can be sure of that. He's up there just waiting to blow.
Yep, nothing can possibly go wrong. Oh, that saying hasn't been invented yet.
All tracking stations, this is Project 4th of July, this is Project 4th of July. We are ready to blow. I repeat, we are ready to blow in 60 seconds from now. Repeat, 60 seconds. Please check your screen.
And this is an episode that was plundered for clips on the old ITC home video trailer. People will remember that line and
steady as a rock.
Various shots from around the lab here.
The floor is yours, Dr. Beaker. Ready when you are.
Then, if everyone is prepared, I shall press the firing button in 40 seconds.
I have taped the words "nothing can possibly go wrong" onto the button just to make sure.
36, 34, 32.
Oh, Mitch is prepared for the Big Bang. His bag of nuts, which he has consumed, he has blown up and he's ready to pop it.
24, 22, 20.
You're not gonna... Oh no, we're gonna do the whole countdown.
16, 14, 12, 10.
What next?
8,
Oh.
6, 4,
Ooh.
2, 0.
Fire! What in tarnation?
Nothing happened. No, except Mitch and his little paper bag.
That wretched monkey.
Oh, Beaker's got sweat on him there. That's unusual to see with the Supercar puppets. But the balloon has not gone bang.
The trace is still on here.
Then it is still up there.
Emergency 1, capsule has failed, explode. Stand by for emergency instructions. Repeat, stand by for emergency instructions.
Oh, this is nice.
Canaveral all stations, stand by.
This is also, I think, the earliest instance of the Supercar team working with somebody else. I think this Colonel Lewis guy is the first person outside of the Supercar team to actually visit the base.
It's your own fault, you know. Bracing that bag and scaring everyone.
You made the general cry, Mitch, you and your paper bag. He's very sensitive.
Now Mike's going up and thinks...
Is he a general or a colonel? I can't remember what I'm calling him.
Well, that's it, Colonel.
Colonel, okay.
Well, say, I've never seen anything like it.
Even though I had to walk through the workshop where it is to get to the office where we're doing all the balloon stuff.
But Mike, we've never tried Supercar at such altitude.
Well, it's the first time for everything.
True, but I wish there was some other way.
Well, if there was, I wouldn't be so worried, believe me. But conventional aircraft can't reach it.
Could you not use a homing rocket?
Well, I guess not, Professor. It's on the fringe as far as range is concerned, and it might just as easy home on the metal foil of the balloon covering. That would bring the canister down, but where?
Somewhere in the middle of the city.
Well, that's just...
Which one? I don't know, and I don't care.
Better get organized then, before she gets right out of range.
Oh. So this is our earliest instance as well of Supercar going into space, or as near as makes no difference, and that was always part of the theme song, you know, she travels in space. But
Supercar can do it, are you?
Of all the Anderson vehicles that could go into space, Supercar, firstly, by far went there the least, but secondly, I don't think I'd want to go into space in Supercar. I don't know if it's to do with the fact that all the other shows that came along later made Supercar look so quaint as a travelling vehicle by comparison, because they were just so much more advanced. But
Other factors.
Supercar kind of...
No time to consider in practice.
It seems like a death trap at times like this. Everything's always so experimental and always so... We don't know if this will actually work. But, yeah, I wouldn't want to go into space in this thing. I don't think I'd even want to go underwater in this thing.
Useless. Forward flight will have...
Just the fact that you're stuck in one room for the whole trip. And you're dependent on that air bubble canopy.
This rocket launcher.
And the slightest hole in it, the slightest problem.
Okay, Professor.
You are in serious trouble.
In a fireball, you will not be able to swerve out of its path.
So?
Fireball? Did you mention fireball?
Mike will still have a considerable amount of cosmic activity to contend with on the way up.
I thought that would be the case.
My voice is a bit different now.
It's not as good as a spacesuit, but it'll help deflect radiation.
Oh, good. Oh, dear.
Here I am, all foil wrapped for instant freshness. Feel like a chicken just going to be popped into the oven.
Not the oven, Mike. Where you're going, it will be more like a deep freeze.
I'll be all right, Professor. I borrowed Doc Beaker's winter underwear.
What?
Pressurization.
Does he know, Mike? Oh, yeah, it's fine. We do this all the time. Mike does look a bit silly in this suit that the Air Force have put together for him.
Here it is. Let's keep it that way.
We'll do our best. Armaments mechanisms are...
And the helmet also makes it really obvious that when the puppet is in Supercar, there's no roof on the canopy. The helmet is sticking right out the top.
Okay, then, just to get the feel of it. Range 1600.
That's too close.
Which makes it even more ludicrous to go into space in this thing.
Range 2000. Fire.
Good, Mike, good.
Direct hit on number 3 rectifier, Professor. You won't be needing it, will you?
All right.
Oh, so is this the installation of Supercar's weapons for the first time?
It's gonna get exciting. I'm going down to see.
But they won't let you in because they don't want you there. Hate to burst your bubble like that.
The telemetry system is now geared over to read for Supercar. All that remains now, I suppose, is...
Takeoff.
Correct.
14,000. 15,000.
Hit the lock on. Fire 1.
Fire 1. Starboard 5,000. 7,000.
I say I do like the technical stuff on the show, but when it comes to the launch sequence and we have to go through this every time, not just charging one engine, but charging both.
Hit the lock on. Starboard charge. Fire 2. Fire 2.
But maybe in the 60s, watching this once a week, people were enthralled by this. Watching them all back to back, which, to be fair, they were never designed to be watched this way, is...
satisfactory.
It does get a bit wearing, but I don't know if that's the show's fault or if it's just over-familiarity with something that was made with the almost absolute certainty that it would never be seen again by anybody.
All clear for takeoff.
Good luck, Mike.
Mike gives Jimmy's encouragement the silent contempt it deserves.
Console to pilot, we read. How do you feel, Mike?
Just fine. Altitude 17,500.
Beaker's underwear is working a treat, Professor. I'm going to have to try some more of these. Oh, it's going wobbly.
It's bucking a bit, Professor.
That's all right, Mike. You're running into tropospheric air currents. Once you get through that and above the tropopoles, they'll decrease.
Yeah, and so will aerodynamic control.
External temperature minus 50. Internal plus 30 centigrade. Now, how does it feel, Mike?
Like a cool, clear New England winter's day.
Yeah, probably because you've got the canopy wide open. And that is something that they must have noticed back in the 60s.
He's well up in the stratosphere now, Jimmy. And from here on, it gets difficult.
Pilot to console. Seems clear of air currents now, Professor. But you'll have to help me with the steering.
Roger.
Oh, Mike's now got a respirator on, and it does look like they've made a bit of an effort to restore the canopy roof. You can still see the strings are coming through the top, but it does now look like there's an actual top part to the
half boost starboard engine.
The surface. Oh dear. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can easily blank out the strings quite easily on these shows. Even something as primitive as Torchy, the strings, being able to see them doesn't bother me, except at times like this where it's like it kind of destroys the narrative cohesion to have the strings poking out of the top of Supercar.
Professor,
Yes, Dr. Beaker, what is it?
I think it would be advisable to ask Mike to perform a brief cockpit check.
Yeah, let's do that. Read off the numbers.
Roger, Consul. Feels cold.
Yeah, Mike's got a respirator and he's got shades.
Cockpit temperature normal, Mike. Beaker says carry on. What about your oxygen equipment?
No trouble at all, Professor. I'll check how much there is left. A couple of hours at least. Normal flow rate. Cockpit, internal pressure. Low. Professor, she's low. I'm losing pressure someplace.
Uh-oh.
Beaker, the cockpit seems to be leaking.
All right, there is no immediate emergency.
He's got my underoos.
I hardly think so. It cannot be a fast leak, and Mike's oxygen mask, assuming it fits well, it will protect him from immediate lack of oxygen. But you will have to find where it is escaping from. Professor.
Yes, Beaker?
Ask him to try and find the source of the...
This is exactly what I mean about not wanting to go into space in Supercar. One tiny hole in that canopy. Oh, and it's...
Be easy, but I can try.
It's game over. Although, again, they're not...
Check the cockpit cover, where it seals. That's the most likely place.
Yeah, we'll ignore the gaping hole in the roof, though. I'm sorry, I won't keep going on about that, but it is funny. They're looking for a hole. Where could it be? Well, we'll ignore the great big gaping hole directly over my head.
Well, you'll have to try and mend it, Mike.
He's found the fracture now.
Well, I did, Professor. Only I didn't bring my puncture repair kit with me.
Oh.
Actually, he did, Professor. I put one down by the right of the seat.
Oh, he's good.
Okay, I got it.
There's the hole. And...
First time I ever mended a puncture from inside the tube.
It's covered.
That's it, folks. Show's over for the moment. Business back to normal.
You're sure it's all right now, Mike?
Fine, Professor. Hey, I must be getting close by now. Well, that was a near thing.
Not really, my dear Colonel. These things are all in a day's work. Everything...
For Supercar. I don't know, like, I kind of like, again, the sort of... The fact that Supercar doesn't really build to anything hugely dramatic. There's more sort of a series of minor, potentially dramatic moments that, don't worry, we've fixed the hole, it's fine. Anyway, here comes the balloon.
Where?
At 10 o'clock.
Bring him down 5 degrees, Professor.
Console to pilot, reduce on port engine, 1 second only.
Switching on clear view now. There she is. There's our baby.
Yeah, but rather a dangerous baby.
It's not so easy, is it?
You can say that again.
Oh, Beaker's basically got the Colonel breathing down his throat.
I must say that canister looks kind of peaceful just hanging there.
Why did they pack this canister full of explosives again? Aside from, having a dramatic reason to need to go up and destroy it.
Got it in the sights, Professor.
Was this experiment, could it really not be done without just an empty container?
Boost port, 1 second. Range 2000.
Or they could have put Jimmy in there if they wanted something to weigh it down. I'm sure he would have gleefully accepted.
Mike, are you still there? You're into 1875.
And I'm going in further, too.
Mike?
Oh, he's so brave.
Oh, I can't hold steady and guarantee a hit at that range. And I haven't brought Supercar all the way up here to miss.
And Graydon Gould is so good at times like this that...
Fire at 9, Professor.
But Mike, you won't get through yourself.
Won't I? I'm going pretty fast.
He's so... He can rattle off the words so quickly and they sound so dramatic. That's it. And he's blown up the explosion thingy, which really wouldn't have blown up the city, whichever city it was. It might have knocked over somebody's TV aerial, but otherwise, it's all good. Mike has saved the day again.
You won't mind us sending you the bill for a new paint job? Oh, certainly.
Oh, Supercar's a bit singed.
I guess that's the least the Air Force can do.
Not at all. It was a great opportunity to run an altitude test.
And nearly kill Mike.
Isn't it on the excitement, though?
Well, Jimmy, we couldn't risk him sticking a paw into that operation.
Oh dear. So now Mitch is...
See what I mean? He's, meddlesome.
Oh, is that it? Oh, okay. That's an odd note to end on. Mitch had just taken one of the General's cigars and was bouncing up and down on a console. Anyway, that was What Goes Up, which I actually rather enjoyed. Supercar! Despite its undeniable primitiveness, only really when compared to what came afterwards. I always like to see Supercar most of the time, and I especially like these early episodes where they're continuing to develop the vehicle and understand how it can operate in certain environments. And again, we didn't really see Supercar go into space all that often. I think it maybe happened a couple of times after this. So, yeah, another good episode of Supercar, one of the earliest triumphs of the series, I think, always pushing back the boundaries of what Supermarionation could do.
Well, normally, when there's a Supercar episode, I would start singing it, but I'm not going to because I know that you
really?
disapprove of my Supercar singing.
Yeah,
But still,
well.
Supercar. That's exciting,
It's
isn't
your
it?
chicken stingray.
My chicken stingray. Sounds like a lovely meal you might get at KFC. Yes, yeah, no, the chicken stingray is good. But anyway,
classic.
Supercar, first time in space.
Supercar.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd really trust Beaker and Popkiss taking Supercar into space because it doesn't look very great, and it's does tend to cause problems and go a bit wrong, doesn't it? A bit death trappy, as Chris said.
Yeah, true enough.
And Richard, if we were in that situation, if I was Beaker and you were Mike, would you borrow my thermal undies?
I mean, that's pretty much you and me right there.
Yeah,
isn't
that's
it?
fair enough. If we, all right, fine. Then would you borrow my thermal undies?
On a very cold day, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, that's what friends are for, right? So,
as long as you wash them first.
Can't guarantee it. Anyway, thank you very much, Chris, for a lovely randomizer, which we thoroughly enjoyed. Who knows what will come next week? Oh, hang on. No, we will. Next week.
Oh, yeah.
Is the 21st, and that's when the winner of the Christmas randomizer selection will have been chosen.
I see.
I think the vote is now closed.
Great.
Or it will be very shortly from the time of release. So we'll find out on the not so random randomizer for Christmas next week. I look forward to that.
Great.
Any more bits and pieces, Richard James, before we wrap up this pod one thing? What more?
Got a few things here. For example, Danny Moy posted on Twitter recently a screenshot from his phone stating that the Gerry Anderson podcast was his top podcast. But, according to that very same screenshot, he's only listened to 36 episodes, or 3,205 minutes. Come on, Danny, you slacker, keep up. Maybe that's this year.
Yeah, but even then that's not enough, is it? Because
it's not enough.
There's been
you must try harder. Over on YouTube, Ian Dealey has been watching Pod 29, or 129 rather, and says, another fab podcast. Hopefully, some of Theo Priestley's predictions will come true one day. And it was great to hear Doctor Who's Richard Herndl on this week's randomizer. Keith Gooch, in a similar vein, says another great episode of the Gerry Anderson podcast with all the usual banter between Richard and Jamie, a new slant on fab facts, great second part of the interview with Theo Priestley, and I liked Chris Dale's randomizer review of the Protectors episode Trial. Not a great episode, but it did have Sally James from Tiswas and Richard Herndl from Doctor Who. Keep up the good work, guys. And finally, Porsche 962C says, thinking of the Protectors, one person who might be interesting to get on the podcast would be 5 times Protectors director John Hough, Hough. He had quite an eclectic career in movies and television, directing some of Hollywood's greats. He was in trouble for a while with Gerry Anderson for staging a car crash, literally, not pretending. He also directed many Anderson actors in other productions, with Robert Vaughan and Ed Bishop in Brass Target, Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Alibi, is that? Parsons? And notably David Warbeck. If Warbeck had been chosen as Bond over Roger Moore, John Hough or Howe may have gone on to direct him in Live and Let Die and Man with the Golden Gun. Hopefully he'd be available to come on. Well, there we are. That's a name, firstly, to learn how to pronounce, and secondly, to get in touch with.
We'll have to see what's possible.
Yes.
He's, what is he, 79 now?
Yeah.
So,
but on the subject of future guests, I mean, I just told you before we started recording, Jamie, that I am in touch with a rather famous director and writer who I've worked with and who my darling wife has worked with.
all right, you show off.
That might be available to come on and do an interview soon. Let's just say he's worked on things like Bugs, October, The 11th Hour. Yeah, ring any bells?
Yes, Mr. Richard James, is that him?
Stephen Gallagher. I'm in touch with Stephen Gallagher to see if he wants to come on and have a chat, and he's just responded to my little message saying that he'd very much like to join us.
Oh, great. Well, that's sorted then.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Either he'll crop up in the new year or he'll go on the list with, Wendy Craig and Ross Kemp.
And Chris Barry.
Yeah. All those people I never managed to grab hold of.
Great, thanks. Okay. Anyway,
yes.
Let's see how we do.
Okay.
Is there any more stuff, or are we done?
Jamie, I've always got stuff. Do you want some more stuff?
Well, I don't know. I think I'd save it for the Christmas episode if I were you.
Well, here's one more. John McDonald. Hello, fellow Podstrons. He says, I went for a nice walk on Sunday afternoon and binge listened to First Action Bureau. I really enjoyed the episodic nature of how this drama was originally released, as it gave us all something to look forward to every week, and it was fun listening to it in podcast form. Also, it was free. A big well done you to all involved, and I definitely recommend listening to FAB in one sitting for enhanced fun and enjoyment.
Ooh.
Over and out.
Oh, thanks, John. That's great. Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, there's more to come next year.
Yes.
So there we go. And I think I should say as well that due to some manufacturing delays, the CD box set will be out in early January as well.
Oh, okay.
It's been pushed back from Christmas, just with everything that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to get enough materials in. All the boats queuing at Felixstowe currently to come into the ports and all that sort of stuff. It's a bit of a tricky time.
It is indeed. Yeah. Fair enough.
Anyway. Everything else is fine. All is good.
We'll still be here.
Well,
those boats at Felixstowe aren't going to stop me doing the podcast every week.
No, thank goodness for that, eh?
Yes.
Some people
Once
are
more
thinking,
with feeling,
probably. Right.
Yeah.
I haven't got time for Once More with Feeling. We've got to go.
No.
We'll be back for Pod 132, which is our sort of Christmassy edition next week.
Yeah.
And we'll probably see you then or something.
See you then. Bye.
Stage 1 complete.
Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
Now, next week,
yes,
I'm going to make a surprise insertion, which is going to shock everyone.
Is it?
Yeah.
What, even me?
Yeah, you're not going to know what it is either.
Well, you know, I'm practically unshockable.
Well, you've never had this happen to you before. So, next week, listen in after the end credits, or the end titles, and you'll be in for a rather interesting surprise.
I can't wait.
I shall say no more. Bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to the Gerry Anderson Podcast. Wasn't it fun?
You have been listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.